Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to argue, explain, or seek revenge. It's to remove yourself completely. Delete him from your life, step into your power, and let life handle the rest. Karma has a way of showing up when you stop trying to control it. There is a quiet, profound power in choosing to remove yourself from someone who has not valued you. It's not about revenge, dramatic exits, or public declarations. It's about reclaiming your energy, your dignity, and your life. Your exit is his lesson, is grounded in this concept. When you step away from a person who consistently disrespected, dismissed, or undervalued you, you stop reinforcing their behavior. You stop giving them the opportunity to take your presence for granted. In essence, your absence becomes the most profound statement you can make. It communicates far more than any argument, confrontation, or attempt at persuasion ever could. Because sometimes the strongest message isn't in the words you speak, but in the life you live after stepping away. Many people underestimate the impact of simply leaving. They feel that closure has to be mutual, that an explanation must be given, or that the other person has to understand what they've lost. But this mindset often prolongs suffering and keeps you tethered to someone who isn't capable of valuing you properly. When you leave without drama, without bargaining, without pleading, you teach a lesson that is indelibly etched in absence. Absence forces reflection. It forces him to face the reality that you are not just a convenience, that your presence wasn't something to take lightly, and that the choice to dismiss or neglect you carries consequences. He will eventually feel your exit also serves as a mirror. It reflects back to him the behavior he exhibited without you having to point it out. When someone ignores the value of what they have, the pain of loss becomes the teacher. They feel the vacuum of your absence in a way that words could never replicate. And while the lesson may not come immediately, it comes inevitably. Life has a way of catching up to choices, and when you step out of the equation, you allow natural consequences to unfold. This is not about revenge. It is about detachment, self-respect, and letting life correct itself while you focus on your own trajectory. The process of leaving also strengthens you. Every time you resist the temptation to engage, to explain, or to justify, you reinforce your boundaries and reclaim your personal power. You begin to internalize that your value is not dependent on recognition from someone who failed to see it. That realization is transformative. It shifts your energy from being reactive, constantly consumed by his actions or absence, to proactive, where your attention is devoted to growth, joy, and purpose. Your exit, therefore, is not a punishment for him. It is an empowerment of yourself. And the more you embrace that empowerment, the more undeniable your lesson becomes. There is also a subtle art to leaving without chaos. It's about grace and clarity. You don't need to make your departure dramatic or public. You don't need to announce your withdrawal. The most potent exits are often silent, observed only in the change of your life and demeanor. Your calm, composed absence speaks volumes, illustrating that you are no longer entangled in the patterns that once drained you. And that quiet strength is often the hardest for someone who underestimated you to digest, because it's undeniable proof that life continues and thrives without their presence. Ultimately, the power of your exit lies in its permanence and intentionality. It is a conscious choice to refuse further compromise of your energy, emotions, or self-worth. By stepping away, you signal that your presence is precious and cannot be taken for granted. You stop enabling behaviors that hurt you and start prioritizing a life that fulfills you. In doing so, you let him experience the weight of his choices naturally, while you move forward with dignity, freedom, and growth. Your absence becomes both your protection and the most effective lesson, demonstrating that sometimes the most profound impact comes not from confrontation, but from choosing yourself and walking away with unwavering self-respect. Waiting for an apology can feel like holding a fragile lifeline, a hope that somehow the person who hurt you will validate your pain and make things right. But the truth is, not everyone is capable of giving the closure, acknowledgement, or remorse you deserve. Stop waiting for apologies is about realizing that your peace and healing cannot depend on someone else's growth, maturity, or willingness to admit their mistakes. Karma doesn't need your input. Life has a way of balancing itself without you pleading, explaining, or convincing anyone of your worth. The moment you let go of the need for an apology is the moment you free yourself from the invisible chains that have kept you emotionally tethered to him. When we wait for apologies, we often stay trapped in a cycle of emotional dependency. We replay the hurt, hoping for recognition that validates our suffering, while the person who caused it continues living their life without consequence. That waiting keeps your energy invested in someone who may never care enough to honor it. It keeps your focus on what they did wrong rather than what you can do to reclaim your joy. By releasing the expectation of an apology, you take back control of your emotional landscape. You stop orbiting around his mistakes and start centering your attention on your own growth, your own healing, and your own happiness. Apologies can be powerful, but only when they come from someone willing and able to take responsibility. When they don't, holding on to the hope that they will only prolong the pain, it keeps your heart soft for someone who hasn't proven themselves worthy of it. Waiting for recognition from someone who isn't prepared to give it is like waiting for rain in a drought. It may never come, and the more you wait, the more parched your spirit becomes. By letting go, you stop watering the seeds of disappointment and start nourishing the parts of your life that actually grow. You redirect that energy toward people, passions, and experiences that elevate you instead of drain you. The act of letting go of the need for an apology is also an act of self-respect. It says, I am enough and I do not need external validation to prove it. You no longer define your worth by his willingness to admit fault. You no longer allow his failure to take responsibility to dictate your emotional state. Instead, you create boundaries around your energy, your mind, and your heart. You acknowledge that his choices are his responsibility, and your healing is yours. This is where true empowerment begins, the understanding that you are not dependent on someone else's conscience to move forward in life. Interestingly, when you stop seeking apologies, you also change the dynamic of how your absence is perceived. Your silence, your distance, and your focus on your own life become louder than any confrontation could ever be. The fact that you are thriving without waiting for him to acknowledge his mistakes sends a clear, undeniable message. Life continues, and it continues beautifully, even without him. That is the kind of lesson that resonates more deeply than words, because it is visible, lived, and authentic. Ultimately, the power of this is in detachment and self-sovereignty. You learn to release resentment not because it's easy, but because it's necessary for your freedom. You allow karma, or the natural consequences of his actions, to unfold without your interference. And while you focus on your growth, your happiness, and your peace, life ensures that the imbalance he created corrects itself. By letting go of the need for apologies, you no longer grant him control over your emotional well-being. Instead, you step fully into your own authority, and that is far more impactful than any acknowledgement he could offer. When someone fails to value you, it's easy to get caught up in their mistakes, their shortcomings, and the what-ifs of the relationship. We often spend so much time replaying their behavior that we forget to invest in ourselves. Focus on your growth, not his mistakes, is about shifting your energy from what went wrong with him to what is right about you, and what you can build for your future. Growth is the ultimate form of power because it is active, intentional, and completely within your control, unlike waiting for him to change or regret his actions. By redirecting your energy toward yourself, you stop reinforcing his narrative and start creating a life that reflects your value without needing his validation. When you focus on his mistakes, you remain trapped in a loop of resentment, regret, and emotional stagnation. Every time you replay his failures in your mind, you are giving them space and power over your thoughts. You keep yourself tethered to the past, while your potential for transformation sits dormant. Growth, however, requires conscious attention and consistent action. It's about investing your time, your energy, and your emotions into projects, passions, relationships, and self-care that elevate you rather than weigh you down. It's about building a life so full and meaningful that the absence of someone who didn't value you becomes irrelevant to your happiness. Personal growth manifests in many ways. It might be pursuing your career goals with renewed vigor, diving into hobbies that bring joy, or strengthening friendships that honor your worth. It might be creating healthier routines, expanding your knowledge, or exploring new experiences that enrich your life. Every step you take toward your personal development strengthens your sense of self and your confidence. The more you invest in yourself, the more magnetic your energy becomes, not because you are trying to prove anything to him, but because thriving is inherently noticeable. Success, confidence, and fulfillment are visible markers of someone who values herself, and they highlight the contrast between the life you are building and the choices he made. Focusing on growth also allows you to detach emotionally from the person who hurt you. When your attention is directed outward toward tangible progress and inward toward self-improvement, there is less mental and emotional space for resentment or longing. You begin to experience life in a forward, moving way instead of constantly looking back. This doesn't mean you ignore the lessons learned from him. Rather, you integrate them as wisdom that informs your decisions and strengthens your boundaries. You no longer waste energy attempting to change or correct him. Instead, you become the change and growth in your own life. Another aspect of this keynote is the natural consequence it creates. When you thrive, when you grow, when you build a life full of purpose and joy, the person who didn't appreciate you is often forced to confront the reality of what they lost. You don't need to call attention to it, argue, or explain yourself. The contrast between their choices and your growth speaks volumes. Karma doesn't require your involvement. It unfolds in the life you're actively creating. By focusing on growth, you become a living testament to the results of self-respect, intentional action, and emotional independence. Ultimately, choosing growth over resentment transforms your entire life trajectory. You reclaim control over your emotional state, your future, and your identity. You stop being defined by someone else's failures and start being defined by your accomplishments, your joy, and your integrity. In doing so, you not only heal from the past, but also build a future that aligns with your worth. This keynote reminds us that the most powerful response to someone who didn't value us is not revenge, confrontation, or regret, it's growth. And growth is unstoppable, undeniable, and ultimately the most effective way to let karma do its job. Setting clear boundaries is one of the most essential yet underestimated steps in reclaiming your life after someone has treated you poorly. Boundaries are non-negotiable. Is about understanding that removing someone from your life isn't an act of cruelty, it's an act of self-respect. Too often, we allow people who don't value us to remain in our lives because we feel guilty for saying no, afraid of confrontation, or worried about being perceived as too harsh. But boundaries are not about controlling others, they are about protecting your energy, your peace, and your emotional well-being. They are the framework within which you honor yourself and your worth, and they teach others how to treat you without you having to spell it out in arguments or ultimatums. When someone consistently disregards your feelings or disrespects your value, tolerating their behavior only reinforces it. It signals that your presence is always available, no matter how they behave, and that your boundaries are flexible or negotiable. That's why being firm and deliberate in creating distance is so critical. Deleting someone from your life is not vindictive, it's a statement that your self-worth is not up for debate. It demonstrates that your time, your energy, and your emotional investment are precious, and you will not give them freely to someone who doesn't recognize or honor them. Boundaries, when enforced with clarity and consistency, are powerful teachers, far more effective than confrontation or persuasion. Boundaries are also a form of self-empowerment. When you establish them, you stop letting others dictate your emotional state. You reclaim control over who has access to your energy and under what circumstances. Emotional detachment isn't about being cold or unfeeling. It's about choosing where and with whom you invest your emotions. It's about stopping patterns of chasing, justifying, or excusing behavior that was never aligned with the respect and love you deserve. Boundaries allow you to engage with life on your terms, not the terms of someone who failed to see your value. One of the key aspects of boundaries is that they create clarity, not just for you, but for the other person. By removing someone from your life decisively, you send a message without words. Access to you is earned, not automatic. This clarity forces them to confront the reality of their behavior. They feel the absence of the person they underestimated, and that absence becomes a mirror reflecting the choices they made. But importantly, your boundaries serve you first. They protect your peace and your growth, ensuring that your life is no longer influenced by someone who cannot or will not treat you as you deserve. Boundaries also allow space for your own healing and self-discovery. By removing toxic influence, you create the mental and emotional room to focus on your goals, passions, and relationships that actually nourish you. You begin to invest in yourself rather than someone else's mistakes or shortcomings. This intentional distance is not avoidance, it is prioritization. It is choosing long-term fulfillment over temporary draining attachments. And as you grow within this space, you naturally attract people and opportunities that align with the level of respect, care, and love you now demand. Ultimately, enforcing boundaries and deleting someone from your life is a declaration of self-worth. It's an acknowledgement that you are deserving of respect, consistency, and genuine care, and you will no longer settle for less. It is also a subtle but powerful way of letting karma take its course. You do not need to intervene, manipulate, or confront. The universe has a way of balancing things when you stand firmly in your power. Your boundaries protect you, empower you, and allow life to unfold in a way that demonstrates the natural consequences of their choices. And through this, you step fully into a life of clarity, peace, and self-respect, showing that the most effective lesson is often delivered through your unwavering strength and dignity. Emotional detachment is one of the most underrated tools when it comes to letting karma take its course. Emotional detachment amplifies karma, is about learning to step back from the chaos someone created in your life and allowing natural consequences to unfold while you focus on your own peace and growth. Too often, after being hurt or taken for granted, we remain entangled emotionally. We check our phones, replay old conversations, or imagine what could have been different. This constant mental and emotional engagement not only prolongs our suffering, but it also keeps the person who hurt us at the center of our energy. Detachment is the process of consciously shifting that energy back to yourself, reclaiming control, and letting life handle the rest. Emotional detachment does not mean that you stop caring about yourself or that you become cold. On the contrary, it is an act of care, a way to protect your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. When you detach, you are no longer reacting to the fluctuations of someone else's behavior. You are no longer giving them power to disrupt your peace. Instead of ruminating on what they did or didn't do, you redirect that focus toward what you can control, your actions, your growth, and your happiness. This shift creates a space in which karma can naturally balance itself, without you having to intervene or seek retribution. When we remain emotionally entangled, we are essentially still participating in the dynamics that caused our pain. By constantly thinking about the person who wronged us, hoping they will regret their actions, or longing for reconciliation, we reinforce their influence over our lives. Detachment cuts this cycle. It creates a buffer that allows the natural consequences of their choices to emerge without your interference. Your peace, stability, and confidence become the silent, powerful counterbalance to their behavior, highlighting what they lost without any words, confrontations, or explanations. Detachment also allows clarity to emerge. When your emotions are no longer tied up in what they do, you begin to see patterns clearly, the ways they disrespected your boundaries, undervalued your presence, or took your energy for granted. Understanding these patterns strengthens your ability to avoid similar pain in the future. It shifts your attention from seeking justice or recognition from them to cultivating resilience and wisdom within yourself. This clarity becomes part of your growth and is an essential step in breaking free from repetitive cycles of disappointment and hurt. Another important aspect of emotional detachment is that it enhances your presence and energy. People are drawn to calm, composed, and self-contained energy. When you no longer give someone access to your emotional turbulence, your life starts to glow in ways that are impossible to ignore. The very fact that you are thriving and unaffected becomes a mirror to the person who failed to value you. It is often in this quiet, confident detachment that they feel the weight of their choices the most. Karma works quietly and effectively, and your absence, composure, and growth amplify its effect. Ultimately, emotional detachment is about reclaiming your life and your energy. It is a declaration that your well-being is no longer negotiable and that you will not allow someone else's behavior to dictate your peace. By detaching, you create a natural space for karma to operate, while simultaneously creating a life that is abundant, joyful, and aligned with your worth. You no longer need to intervene, explain, or wait for recognition. Your life, lived fully and peacefully, becomes the ultimate testament to your strength, your self-respect, and the inevitability of consequences for those who failed to value you. In this way, emotional detachment is not just a protective strategy, it is a powerful, transformative act that allows both you and karma to fulfill their roles naturally. Success, joy, and fulfillment are some of the most powerful ways to demonstrate that life moves on. Your success will be the ultimate payback, centers on the idea that living fully is the most profound response to someone who didn't value you. Often, when we've been hurt, we think the best way to show someone their mistake is through confrontation, arguments, or attempts at making them feel guilty. But true impact doesn't come from those things. It comes from stepping into your own life so fully that their absence is starkly felt without you having to point it out. Success and happiness are visible, undeniable, and unarguable. They communicate your worth more powerfully than any words ever could. When you focus on your own growth, achievements, and fulfillment, you shift the narrative entirely. Instead of being defined by what he did or didn't do, you define yourself through what you are creating, becoming, and experiencing. This isn't about seeking revenge, it's about proving to yourself that your life is too valuable to be held hostage by someone else's inability to appreciate it. Each step forward, each goal reached, each moment of joy is a quiet but powerful testament to your strength and resilience. It is a living demonstration that you are thriving, independent, and undeterred, and it often serves as the ultimate wake-up call to those who underestimated you. Success and fulfillment amplify karma because they operate in a realm beyond manipulation. You are not forcing him to feel regret or remorse. You are simply stepping into the life that is rightfully yours. In doing so, the natural consequences of his choices become evident without any effort from you. People often don't realize what they've lost until they see the person they dismissed flourishing in ways they cannot influence. Your achievements, your happiness, your radiant energy all serve as reminders that he had a chance to be part of something meaningful and chose otherwise. Karma is amplified not by your actions against him, but by your intentional focus on yourself and your future. Living fully also transforms your energy in ways that are magnetic. When you invest in your passions, career, hobbies, and relationships, you cultivate an aura of confidence, independence, and self-respect. That energy draws people to you who align with your value and supports the life you're building. Simultaneously, it creates contrast between the life you are living and the choices he made. He sees, often from a distance, that the version of you he overlooked is thriving, happy, and whole. This silent yet powerful visibility makes him confront the reality of his choices in a way that words, arguments, or attempts at explanation could never achieve. The beauty of success, as the ultimate payback, is that it is sustainable and fulfilling in its own right. Unlike revenge or manipulative tactics, thriving is positive, long-lasting, and beneficial to your life. Each accomplishment reinforces your self-worth and independence. Each joyful experience becomes a building block for your future. Your life becomes a living testament to what happens when someone values themselves enough to move forward, regardless of whether the other person regrets their choices. You are no longer emotionally tethered to someone who failed to see your value. Instead, you are fully immersed in the richness of your own journey. Ultimately, this teaches that the most effective and satisfying way to respond to someone who didn't appreciate you is not through confrontation or attempts to make them feel guilty. It is through action, presence, and embodiment of your worth. By living a life full of success, joy, and self-respect, you allow karma to operate naturally while you reap the benefits of your intentional growth. Your life becomes your statement, your power, and your ultimate triumph, proving that the best revenge is not revenge at all. It is living beautifully, fully, and unapologetically, leaving the consequences to unfold exactly as they should. In the end, deleting him from your life and letting karma do its job isn't about punishment. It's about reclaiming your power, your peace, and your future. By focusing on yourself, setting boundaries, and thriving, you create a life so full and radiant that the consequences of his choices naturally unfold. Your growth, happiness, and success become the ultimate proof that your worth was never in his hands, and that moving on gracefully is the most powerful statement of all.